Hello and welcome to the webinar today. My name is Kevin Ridings. I'm an EMEA Alliances SE for Veeam Software. I'm joined today by Nick Dyer, a Principal Technical Architect for HPE. And we're going to be running through one of a series of webinars that we're going to be running. This particular webinar is named Predict, Perform and Protect. And we're going to be looking at some focus around some of the HPE portfolio. And in this session, we are actually going to be focusing on Nimble. So we quickly take a look at the agenda. In fact, before I do that, just a few points of admin. If you do have any questions during the session today, there is a Q&A session, a Q&A panel available within the GoToWebinar. There is also a chat. If you can pop your questions in the question section, that would be great, and we'll try and answer them maybe as we go, or we'll pause at the end to take a look at those. So let's take a look at the agenda. So the agenda for today's session, we're going to be looking and walking through a Nimble storage overview. Then we're going to be going through a Veeam overview. We're then going to be looking at the joint integrations and benefits. And then great, we're going to be looking at a demo. We're going to be diving into the demo lab, taking a look at the anatomy of the backup jobs. We're going to take a look at some of the explorers, what we'll learn about in a little while, and then there will be time, hopefully, for a Q&A section at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Nick Dyer for the first part of the session, Nimble Storage Overview.
Thanks, Kev. So good morning, all. So I'm going to be delivering a very, very quick Nimble storage overview and what we're trying to deliver with the HPE Nimble storage platform. And one of the key elements of the Nimble storage platform is the integrated data protection element that we provide. And one of the big things that we're seeing from the landscape of data protection is that data sets are absolutely growing, and we know that they're accelerating. We believe that we're going to see 52% worth of data growth year on year in the next 12 months. Whilst at the same time, dependency on data is increasing, we need data to be ever available. We don't suffer downtime anymore. We need things to be there and running 24/7, 365. Our SLAs for requirements for recovery, but also for use cases, are moving from days and hours to minutes. We need data to be available, but when it's not available, we need to get it back as quickly as we possibly can. The other big threat that we now have in our environments is ransomware. It's a threat to your data that we need to be able to help you prevent against. So all of the other concerns that we have around things such as outages from data centers or hardware platform problems or file level corruptions or deletions from a user perspective, or even being able to make sure that we're compliant from a regulatory perspective, whilst at the same time delivering business value and delivering new types of data analytics or machine learning elements of platforms, we have huge amounts of pressure inside the internal infrastructure as well as our cloud-based infrastructures. Next slide, please, Kev. So whilst we're trying to do that from a data protection perspective, we are also trying to deliver digital transformation, as we know. So we're trying to increase the usage of applications that are doing more with data. So we live in a multi-cloud world where we're now delivering cloud-native applications as well as traditional on-premises or cloud-based apps. We're trying to be able to transform our production environment away from monolithic architectures into something that can burst, into grow, into can shrink. But also we need to be able to harness the world of multiple clouds, where we need to be able to grow into public clouds, be able to harness the performance and the ability of private clouds, and be able to flex from one cloud provider to another on the fly. Whilst at the same time, as I mentioned before, big data, machine learning and analytics is becoming a major player for every single industry. And we're seeing huge disruption from large enterprises all the way through to public sector and commercial accounts, where we're starting to really drive huge amounts of data that might either be transient or it might need to be kept for years. And that data set is growing exponentially day on day, year on year. And we need to find out a way to be able to back that up and recover it instantaneously and very, very quickly. Next slide, please, Kev. So one of the big things that we do at Nimble is that we have a technology that's gone beyond Flash. So we have a storage technology which is based on block parameters of iSCSI or Fiber Channel, but the main benefits of the technology isn't that it's a flash-enabled storage array. The main benefits of the technology are that we can do predictive analytics and machine learning within the platform to actually derive performance issues or issues around availability before they actually ever happen. So much so that we're able to deliver a 6/9 availability of every Nimble storage array that gets implemented, be it for primary or for backup use. We're also now able to deliver a platform that allows us to have a cloud strategy. So we can actually move and migrate data and replicate data from on-premises Nimble technology up to Nimble Cloud volumes connected to Azure or to AWS instances. And we can give you easy mobility to flex from the cloud provider to an on-premises storage array and vice versa. Finally, we have a concept of timeless storage, where we do not charge licensing on the platform. We want our customers to be able to use the integrated data protection. We want our customers to be able to use snapshots as backups. But more importantly, we want customers to be able to get very, very good lifespan out of the products. So we want to be able to build in availability guarantees. So we have a 6/9 availability guarantee in the platform, but whilst at the same time we underwrite that we essentially ensure that customers can upgrade components within the array to ensure that they get a 5 to 7 year roadmap of the technology they spend on today. And they can flexibly move things around within the infrastructure to allow systems to be repurposed for backup, disaster recovery, or even secondary storage. Next slide, please, Kev. And one of the core tenets of Nimble is that we have the industry's best, most granular data services, which are all inclusive within the array. And we do these data services on each array, so they're not different depending on the type of array you buy. But also we do event data services which are delivered to the application. So we can do application-specific data services for things such as deduplication and compression. We run global dedupe and global compression on a primary storage array without any performance overhead. We can do application plugins for VMware and Hyper-V, but also SQL and Exchange and Docker and Oracle, which means that we can now provide instantaneous cloning, quality of service, and secure multi-tenancy. A big area of our focus today is going to be on the protection layer. We can do up to 100,000 snapshots on a Nimble storage array without any performance overhead. And we can take snapshots as little as every 5 minutes, and we can make them virtual machine or application consistent. That ultimately means that we can now start using them as a recovery point for backups. And this is where our Veeam integration comes in that we'll discuss a bit later on. But we can now offer instantaneous restores. We can offer the ability to spin them up as clones for secondary test and dev UAT copies. We can replicate them from site to site, but also we can do volume level software-led encryption on the array. So we can now encrypt everything with full FIPS compliance. And finally, we give you a window into what's really going on with cross-stack virtual machine analytics, with performance insights, with heat maps, and we can even forecast where you may be in the future, all through machine learning generated in the cloud. And as I mentioned, all of this is embedded within the Nimble storage technology. So you procure a Nimble array and you get all the goodness from a data services suite all the way up front. Next slide, please, Kev. This is a build slide, so I'm just going to wait for this just to build out. So what you'll see is the four builds that will come out here, and it's all about resiliency. So we want to offer a primary storage platform without compromising your data. So one of the big things that we focus on is data integrity. So we do not have any challenges with data integrity or resiliency within the platform based on how we delivered our file system and actually how we derive machine learning with our platform. We're able to offer a guaranteed 6/9 availability within the array. We actually have 27,000 arrays installed in our custom base right now that are running at over 6/9 availability. We can tolerate 3 simultaneous drive failures within a storage array without any data loss whatsoever. And this allows us to then start using intra-drive parity and even integrated sparing. And what this gives us is the world's most paranoid RAID set for primary storage. Because of that, we can start using that data set as a form of backups, and we can start using that for replication as well. So we can now use the integrated data protection to allow us to integrate backups more frequently with instantaneous recoveries. with application snapshots and replication. So I can now do snapshots of my data sets every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, whatever I may want to do, but I have no hidden challenges with what performance overhead that may drive on the storage system. And also we're able to offer granular encryption at rest with application level encryption, but most importantly, data shredding. So if we delete data within an array, we can ensure that that data is completely shredded as we're changing the encryption key at the same time. Next slide, please, Kev. So just to talk a little bit more about the data protection, the snapshot technology that we have built in is truly best in class. We do efficient, thin, compressed, and deduplicated snapshots on a metadata pointer-based technology, which means that we can actually take hundreds or even thousands of recovery points of your data without any performance overhead, but also with near instantaneous restores. We also do complete integrity checking across the entire stack. So much so that Nimble Storage has actually never suffered any data loss with any customer anywhere in the world. So we can now do local recovery points at any given point in time on a storage array, keep them for days or weeks, or even months or even years. I can then clone them out, and I can do instantaneous no data copy cloning. And we can do thin, compressed, and deduplicated copies, which means that we can now create different branches for dev, test, UAT, backups, and restores on the same primary storage array without duplicating that data. We can replicate them from site to site using our replication technology, which again is WAN optimized. And we do compressed replication across the wire with only block differentials, with encryption enabled as well. So I can now have all flash on my primary site and a very capacity dense hybrid flash on my DR site. And I can have site-to-site replication running with backups and restores running from primary to secondary with Veeam augmentation and instrumentation built in the middle. And then finally, we offer the smart secure encryption at rest, which gives us full FIPS compliance and certification, where we can encrypt on the volume level or the application level, and we preserve that within the replication link as well. Next slide, please, Kev. So really now it's all about how we drive business outcomes. So now we want to be able to get customers to move away from a 24-hour based backup window to move more towards maybe a 15-minute or a 10-minute RPO with the snapshot integration, with a sub 5-minute RTO with the primary storage element with Nimble. But also now we can build in integrated development and testing with the sandbox element of Veeam, leveraging Nimble storage technology under the hood to do so. From a resource management, we want to be able to have one place to orchestrate this. And we can delegate tasks from different people within the BU to be able to do this within our customer base. But it's also about how we take the host impact away. So how can we offload it away from the servers, drive it onto the storage array to actually use those storage array features to the best potential we have. But it's all about simplicity. We need to make this simple for the IT generalist. We need to make this automatic. So we need to automate disaster recovery verification and documentation with a single pane of glass for protection for all the workloads. Next slide, please, Kev. So it's a joint package with the Nimble storage technology with the Veeam options on top. We can now deliver a simplified data availability platform, which delivers us better operations and ease of use, single integrated management, and verified backups for recoverability. A huge bump in performance because we can now back up faster and restore at the speed of flash, recover in a dramatically reduced time frame versus what you may see in the industry, and then give huge benefits for development and test with the data labs. And then finally be able to generate huge amounts of efficiency by now start using different types of technology to retain vast amounts of backups and snapshots and extend retentions from weeks to months or even years. Next slide, please, Kev.
Well, Nick, thank you very much for that fantastic overview and so much detail in there about some of the functionalities and the business values of the Nimble product portfolio there. What we're going to do now is we're going to go through an overview of the Veeam technology, a little introduction around Veeam, and then go through over the coming slides into some of the great better together values. But look, let me first start with, just in case a couple of you on the call are not aware of Veeam. We were founded in 2006. We have north of 3,000 employees, 300,000 customers, and our growth is looking great. But we're all about enabling the always on business. And we've found doing this with our customers remain happy with the software that we're providing. And in reflection of that, we have a particularly high net promoter score there of 73, which is approximately 3 times the industry average. So we're obviously very happy with that. But let me take you through some of the Veeam vision. We want to be the most trusted provider of intelligent data management. You'll notice that we talk less these days about backup and recovery. It's about using data. It's about managing that data that can be acquired from either private cloud, managed cloud, public cloud, maybe looking at protecting and using that data from software as a service models, and also physical architectures as well. So that really is the Veeam vision, to be able to protect all and use the data from all those types of locations. And we have the Veeam hyper availability platform, which delivers that great value of data labs. So be able to get leveraging that data, using the data that we've got from those workloads, visibility and control across cloud, software as a service, and physical architectures. And we do this, we underpin that, of course, with our backup and recovery services and replication and failover services, which would not be as powerful if we had those APIs into the particular technologies across applications, hypervisors, storage, and networking. Of course, we're going to be focusing on a particular API today around integration into the Nimble arrays. So we did some research, and it was found that more Veeam runs on HPE infrastructure than any other vendor, and Nimble is a key part of that architecture, delivering that great snapshot technology and that fantastic predictable performance, which is something we're going to be looking at in a couple of minutes. I myself have had involvement in a large number of organizations deploying Veeam and HPE Nimble together, and customers are often very surprised at the performance and the capabilities and restoration capabilities of that Veeam and HPE Nimble together. So at this stage, I'd like to hand back over to Nick just to go through a short section around some of the HPE and Veeam capabilities.
Indeed, thanks, Kev. So I think going back to the previous slide that you had shown, I believe that the statistic for Nimble is that I believe somewhere in the region of about 75 to 80% of all Nimble customers are running Veeam integrated as part of the backup and also the hyper availability technology. So it really is an incredibly strong use case to join both of those technologies together. So now we're going to just jump quickly forward into the predict section about what we can deliver. As part of the Nimble portfolio, we have the ability to offer some good use cases that you can now implement as part of HPE Nimble Storage and Veeam. So we have primary storage technologies with our snapshot integration, and that could be based on Nimble Storage all flash, or it could be based on Nimble Storage hybrid flash technology. The technologies there, we can build the snapshot integration. As I mentioned previously, the data set is exactly the same. So for any primary storage customer using all flash or hybrid flash, we can be able to use the storage snapshot integration for the least amount of data loss and the fastest data restores that you can be able to provide on a 5-minute, 10-minute, 15, 30, or even 60-minute window for backups. We can then replicate them using Nimble Storage technology to hybrid flash technology. So we could have all flash technology in one site, and then we could have hybrid flash technology on the other site. The benefit of a hybrid flash storage array is that we get an incredibly cost-efficient platform, which gives us huge amounts of capacity at a really good price point. So to give you an example, we can fit 210 terabytes of raw storage in one 4U system. And when you introduce deduplication and compression on top, that can really exponentially grow to maybe 2 or 3 times that amount. Veeam can then also do Veeam replication. So we can then do Veeam replication offsite to either hosted Nimble technology somewhere else, or even to the cloud with Veeam Cloud Connect. And that can be used for compliance and audit and disaster recovery. And then finally, we can also do Veeam replication or Veeam backups, and that might go to a Veeam repository which might be stored on HPE servers, or it could even go to HPE Store Once for a long-term archival from a backup to disk perspective. So we have a comprehensive architecture end-to-end to be able to provide a very, very good solution. Next slide, please. So this allows us to really show you what we can do. So we have the hypervisor, so the VMware or Hyper-V hypervisor, running applications such as SQL, Exchange, or file shares. What we do is that all runs on Nimble Storage primary arrays. With Veeam, that actually can then implement and orchestrate Nimble Storage snapshots. So Nimble Storage can then coalesce and snapshot the virtual machine data sets, store that locally on the array. Then Veeam can augment and orchestrate that going from one site to another with Nimble replication or Veeam replication, even off to the cloud. And that allows us to run things such as real workloads on secondary storage, something that we typically don't do. It allows us to shrink backup and recovery windows, but also simplify operations. Next slide, please. And one of the major benefits is that we're able to run deduplication on our hybrid flash technology. So even though this technology might be seen as a hybrid technology as a better cost per gig, we can run deduplicated data on it, whilst at the same time it's enabled with flash. So we can use this as secondary storage if we wish to, but also we can use it to put backup data to work. So if we're doing backups to this storage array, I can then do instantaneous restores, or I can use that data for secondary storage because it's got flash-enabled technology. So I can now spin data up on my backup storage to actually use it for UAT or test dev, to actually restore data back without having to drag the whole thing back to primary. But also something else that we can do, which is really exciting, is verified backups. So we can now do sure backups using the flash-enabled technology to ensure that we're always verifying your backup data to make sure that your data has been backed up correctly and is going to restore when you need it to restore. So I think in the next slide, Kev's just going to cover what the 3-2-1 rule is. So Kev?
Yes, thanks for that, Nick. So yeah, at Veeam we always talk about the 3-2-1 rule, and really the 3-2-1 rule is ideally to protect you from almost any failure scenario. So we look at the 3-2-1 rule, and really it answers a number of important questions. The first one is, how many copies of my data should I have? We believe you should have at least 3 copies of your data. You always need at least 1 more copy than you need to get yourself a recovery. Not 1 less, of course. So you would need 3 copies, and one of those copies is the production copy and 2 others. And very important that those 2 others are stored on different threat domains. So that would be on different logical pieces of storage, maybe even different architectures of storage, perhaps off on tape or on a completely different type of array. But we also would suggest that you have at least 1 in a different location. Again, changing that threat plane, that threat domain, and creating that degree of separation of where that recovery point would exist. But just to talk to one of the features that Nick mentioned a few minutes ago, we can take the 3-2-1 rule a step further. We can turn that 3-2-1 rule into the 3-2-1-0 rule. Because leveraging the Sure Backup technology, we can guarantee that all those 3 copies on 2 different medias and 1 in a different location are guaranteed error-free because we run them through the Sure Backup technology. Just moving on to the next slide, and Nick will be able to show you how that can be achieved with some of the Nimble technology.
Absolutely. So you can see here how we've got different numbers designating how we're now compliant to the 3-2-1 rule. So as Kev mentioned, 3 copies of your data, 2 different media types, and 1 copy offsite. So what we can now provide, essentially, are Nimble Storage primary data sets being snapshotted locally on the Nimble array. We can then replicate them using Nimble Storage replicated technologies to another Nimble Storage array offsite somewhere else. Then we can use Veeam replication, and Veeam can then replicate that to either another private cloud or even to a public cloud with Veeam Cloud Connect. That allows you to then have complete 3-2-1 availability, whilst at the same time running sure backup for the verified backup element to ensure that you've always got good data to be able to recover from, no matter where you're trying to do it in your architecture. So next slide, please. So a summary for just this part of the overview is that we're able to deliver comprehensive protection for you guys, no matter what you're doing with your data across virtual, physical, and cloud. This simplifies manageability because you orchestrate everything through Veeam. You don't actually orchestrate any of this through Nimble. It all goes through the Veeam user interface. It delivers you the flash accelerated data protection and also recoverability that we need, but it's optimizing your efficiency at the same time. And the real thing that underneath the biggest thing that we're doing is delivering hyper availability. So we're reducing RPO, we're reducing your recovery time objectives. We're giving you better recovery point objectives, no matter where you are, be it on one site or multiple sites or even in the public cloud. So we're delivering you best in class data protection for your business. So now we're on to the perform element of the technologies. How do we actually do this? And this is the case of VMware data protection. So we all know about VMware and how VMware provides APIs to protect the virtual machines, which is the VADP technology. Any ISV that leverages the API is required to use the method, which is the snapshot technology. At the end of the backup or replication job that the host side is doing, the VM snapshot has to be deleted. And this is normally where the problem comes in, because we have a huge amount of time between the create snapshot and the delete or the commit snapshot. And we do this typically every 24 hours. So normally 7 p.m. in our local time zone is when we're doing this, normally away from peak hours. However, the irony is that the off-peak hours are now actually becoming peak, because we're now trying to do off hours data sets, machine learning or data scrubbing or indexing to be able to provide more value to the business. So how do we move away from this technology? Because what we're doing today is this. We take the snapshot, and then we've got a huge amount of time, which could be that backup and replication, at which point in time the VMs are stunned, or at which point in time we're ballooning that VM snapshot. And then we've got to do the commit and the clear down of that snapshot. And that's where the problems live. So this time frame could be maybe minutes. It could be even hours. It could take 2 to 3 to 5 to even 7 hours for this whole process to work. And there's a huge amount of load on the storage as well as the hosts whilst all of this is happening. So we tend to do this once every 24 hours, but this is now becoming a major problem for shops, because we want to be able to run 24/7 in production, and we don't have time to do this. So how can we fix this? So with our technology, being able to back up from the snapshots, we have our primary storage, and with our primary storage, we can take an instantaneous granular snap at any given point in time. That granular snapshot is instantaneous. It takes less than a couple of seconds to create. What we can then do is present that snapshot to a backup proxy, which Veeam mounts, and then Veeam can then back that off to anywhere else it wants to go. So Veeam can now do off-host backups to a backup repository of your choice, be it Store Once, be it any other technology that you may have, maybe even a local server with some disks inside it. The benefit of this technology is that we're now dramatically reducing down the time that you have that VM snap issue. So you take a VM snapshot, we do the storage snapshot, which takes seconds, and then we do the commit. So we're reducing the backup window down from hours all the way down to minutes. And that is the overall time that you need that VM snapshot lifetime. And after that, you've got your backup and replication, which is occurring off the servers, actually on the storage array. So you can now use the snapshot as a backup, you can replicate it, you can use Veeam replication, or you can then take it off to another place. So the major benefits for this is near instantaneous commits. We're using the storage awareness and intelligence to back this stuff up. but it's also all about reducing the impact on production, because it allows us now to do frequent backups. We can do this in the middle of the day if we want to, which drives better RPOs for our data sets. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to hand back over to Kev for the next section.
Thanks again for that, Nick. A great explanation of the reason that we're needing that storage integration to really bring that efficiency to the transiting that data into a backup repository. Thank you very much. So let's take a look at the availability with Veeam and Nimble. Just diving into sort of an architecture slide here. You can see on the left-hand side of the slide there that we have a Nimble primary array. We have a hypervisor hosting some virtual machines. We also have some physical and cloud servers that we can obviously protect with Veeam. And just to sort of summarize the 3-2-1 piece, we are able to take all the hypervisor-based backups made very efficient by the Nimble storage integration over to a hybrid flash array or another type of repository, maybe over to tape, or out to maybe a replication to another location, or perhaps, as Nick said, out to Cloud Connect as well. So really helping you adhere to that 3-2-1 that we do mention throughout this presentation. So let's now take a dive into what we actually do within the UI. We're going to get to a demo in a little while, but just want to walk through some of the actual functionality, we're going to look at some screenshots around how we create certain types of jobs. So diving straight into a Nimble VM backup plus a snapshot on a primary array. So you can see here that during a backup job, we're going to go through the anatomy of a backup job in a demo later on, but just really wanted to show you the simplicity of the different configurations that are possible here. So you can see there we have an automatic selection of backup property. We have a repository, which is in fact a scale-out repository selected. So we're going to be taking an out of technology, out of Nimble backup to a Veeam repository, but also going to have snapshot. So what we would do there, we would set the retention for the particular repository, but then also configure a secondary destination for this. When we've selected the secondary destination, what that will actually do for us is prompt for a second screen, second wizard, to look at where we're going to be able to send the secondary data to. So just looking into the configuration of that, we're able to click add within the secondary target and then be able to select where we want that secondary copy to be. Whether we want to send that, well, in this particular screenshot, we're sending this to a Nimble snapshot. So we're going to retain the application consistent snapshot and the backup. But you can see here, we're able to set the retention on that snapshot as well. Okay, and then another option, because what we've looked at there is we're taking the backup and mounting it from a primary Nimble array. And that does bring, as Nick mentioned, through the efficiencies there, a great efficient way of transiting data. But we can do something even better and maybe even less impacting. So we walked through the process earlier of creating the VM, creating a hypervisor-based snapshot, taking a storage-based snapshot, and then taking the backup. However, we can do something better here. What we can do, we can then ask for that to be replicated to a secondary array, mount it from the secondary array, and then create the backup or replication piece off that secondary array, really taking that data movement out of band. Let's just walk through what can be possible here. So we would be able to select a regular backup repository because we of course want to take a backup, and then we configure the number of restore points, but we then enable that secondary, but we choose a slightly different option once we click on add. Because what we actually want to do is we want to take the source of the backup from a Nimble snapshot replicated copy, which would be over on the secondary array. And again, we can keep that snapshot on the secondary array and keep a retention of that also. So we would be able to use that for the data source. Here is an option for a VM backup plus a snapshot on a secondary array, so we've got a longer retention within that secondary piece. So we would select the regular backup repository. We would again configure the number of restore points. We would again configure the secondary destinations. Really what I'm showing you here is all the functionality that is available is very straightforward, very easy to use within the wizards. And we, again, we'll be looking at this in the demo in a few minutes. So once we've selected, again, we want to use the secondary destination. This is where we're able to select the source being that replicated copy, set those points in time. And there we have the option there. But here we have, again, a slightly different option. So it's a virtual machine backup with a snapshot on both the primary and the secondary. So just walking through what would be possible here, you would select a regular backup repository. You again would select the points in time you wish to keep. You would configure the secondary destination. And what you would select here, you would click the Nimble snapshot, how many points to keep, and then click the Add Nimble Replicated Copy, which you can see here. So this is going to be taking a true VM off technology backup, but also keeping a snap on the primary and a snap on the secondary with a retention that's configurable, as you can see here. So lots of different options, really deep integration with the Nimble arrays. You can see there, all the art of the possible, really, again, is what I'm trying to show you here. Lots of integration. So here we have one option that we refer to as the orchestrated snapshot job. So this is the ability to orchestrate application consistent snapshots, but not take them out for backups. The primary use case for this maybe is if a particular organization hasn't at this stage had made budget available for an off technology backup. We can orchestrate this, create that single pane of glass of orchestration of creating that application consistent snapshot. Again, if we just walk through this option. So you can see here, rather than selecting a traditional repository, we're actually setting or selecting the Nimble snapshot as the primary target. Again, we set the retention here, and we don't need to, in this particular option, configure a secondary destination. But looking at the next option, we certainly can do. So what we can do is we can orchestrate the creation of an application consistent snapshot on the primary array, ask that to be replicated to a secondary array, again, but don't take it out for backup. And again, we'll just walk through the possibilities of that. So we select the Nimble snapshot as a backup repository as we did in the previous, but we do select secondary after we've selected the number of restore points to keep. Once we've selected the configure secondary destinations, we get the pop-out window, and then we can select Nimble snapshot replicated copy, set a retention on that, configure the number of snapshots to keep, and there we have it. We have a way of orchestrating all the technology and all the integrations in one user interface. So what I'm going to look at now is a number of our recovery features that are possible from both backups and storage snapshots. And the first one that we always like to talk about is instant VM recovery. Nick's already talked about instantaneous recovery from snapshots, but we can orchestrate that here very, very easily. So if you've not seen instant VM recovery before, what we have is the ability to start a VM either from a backup file or from a snapshot in approximately 2 minutes. So get that machine back in service, doing its production job very, very quickly without any hassle. Turns the ability for an IT generalist, I think Nick referred to it as earlier, of being able to get that machine back in anger in the event of a complete outage of that particular virtual machine. We wouldn't leave it in that temporary recovery location. We certainly would ask for it to be migrated to production, but it's the power of getting that back in service and performing its normal operations. Very, very quick. And of course, if that's from a snapshot, that could be from 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, as Nick suggested earlier. And we'll be able to see some of this in the lab in a few minutes. So just moving on to a feature that we always like to talk about, and we've referred to it in a number of times during this session, and that's our Sure Backup technology, giving you 100% recovery verification. So that's way beyond an ad hoc test of a file recovery, or perhaps comparing checksums, proving that the same data exists within a backup or a snapshot that it does within production. There's no real guarantee of recovery, because we're going far beyond and to a much higher level. Because what we do with the Sure Backup technology, we can mount from snapshot or stream from a backup repository a subset of the virtual machines, maybe an application stack. And what we can do there in the isolated virtual lab, we can test, firstly, the virtual machine is in fact functional. So we would look for a response from tools, maybe a ping, or a ping from or a heartbeat. We would then look at the operating system for that ping, and then really where the value is. We can prove that the application is in fact functional. So we can do a get from a HTTP server, pull some table data from SQL, whatever gives you that green light of service, we can test for. So it really does give you 100% guarantee of recovery. And then we drop you an email, and then we move on to the next workload that we wish to test. Taking that feature one step further, we have Veeam Data Labs. So within Veeam Data Labs, we could be streaming the particular workloads that we're wanting to interact with from a backup, but really where the power can come here and the performance and the scale of this, yes, it works great from a repository. And if that repository is a Store Once, one of HPE's great deduplication appliances with Catalyst support. But there potentially are some limitations. That the true power of the data lab isn't really unleashed until you're running that data lab from storage snapshots, because that really allows you to get that near production-like performance from the storage snapshot, bringing back a number of virtual machines for different use cases. So for non-persistent dev, test, troubleshooting, maybe for data analytics, maybe for some compliance review, understanding what data sets existed at particular points in time. The integration with the HPE Nimble storage arrays and leveraging data labs from those really delivers fantastic performance for the Veeam Data Labs. Just one thing to add there, you can of course interact with that data lab manually. So we spin up a little helper appliance which allows you to interact in a secure way with the machines that are actually sat within the particular virtual lab there. And as I mentioned, that can be from storage snapshots, and obviously the great benefit of that is that true production level performance. So if we look at the recovery from HPE storage snapshots, if we just looked at backups, a cyclic backup of every 24 hours, as Nick mentioned, your RPO is potentially up to 24 hours, maybe with some application alterations in there. However, it's on average every 24 hours. But if you blend the technology, blend the use of snapshots and backups, you have the ability to leverage your nightly backups on that 24-hour recovery point objective, but also use those snapshots that are created down on the array, perhaps in this example, just once an hour, but could be created far more frequently than that, and use those, blend those two technologies together to be able to recover granular items from our explorers, which we're going to take a look at just now. So we have our explorers. Our explorers are able to provide recovery from both backups and snapshots. We have an explorer for Microsoft Exchange, so the ability to bring back individual email items, calendar items, contact items in 4 clicks and no staging. And from a storage snapshot, very performant. So even if that snapshot was created without Veeam's knowledge, we can pull data from that snapshot, but it's truly the IT generalist. It's the restore operator that can use these functions from the storage snapshots. They don't need to understand how to mount and clone and make rewritable and such. They can just use it from within the Veeam UI, which we will be showing you in a couple of minutes. And we have the Explorer for Microsoft SharePoint, so granular recovery for objects and documents within the content database. We have full site recovery also for SharePoint. Again, 4-click recovery for what was a perhaps a complex type of recovery. And we have the Explorer for Active Directory. So the ability to bring back Active Directory objects, user objects, computer objects, Active Directory integrated DNS records, config partition records. The UI looks like Active Directory users and computers. Again, 4-click recovery. You can even bring back computer objects and user objects with their original password intact, which is quite a great feature when maybe huge mistakes have been made. And we have the Explorer for Microsoft SQL. So a slightly different take on the Explorer here. This is about bringing back SQL databases which are transactionally consistent and rollable and replayable in time. Again, from backup or from a storage snapshot, even if we didn't create that storage snapshot ourselves. And we have the same functionality for Oracle as well, that granular recovery using our Explorer for Oracle. So we do have the Explorer for storage snapshots. So as I mentioned a minute or two ago, even if we haven't created those storage snapshots, we have the ability to index, reference them, and recover from them, which we'll be seeing just in a second. Okay, with that, we'll dive right into the demo. So hopefully you can now see my Veeam Backup Replication install, and we'll very quickly just go through some of the architecture. What we'll do first is we'll just go through the anatomy of a particular job that I have created here. So within the backup section, I have 2 jobs here. So we have backup from a Nimble snapshot. So we'll just walk through. The users of Veeam will already be aware of what's within here, but just wanted to walk through and show the simplicity. So we will be able to select the particular virtual machines. You can select, as we have done here, by a particular data store. So any VM that exists on the data store will be protected within this job. You can add specifically. You can add using vSphere tags, which is becoming quite popular. So if your build process includes tagging a virtual machine, saying it's a gold SQL server perhaps, we have the ability to include that in the appropriately service level job for gold SQL servers. But as I said, we've added via data store. And this is where we would, as you saw in the screenshots earlier, you would select the type of proxy that was in play and the repository that you're wishing to go to. And we have a scale out backup repository selected here. When we move through to guest processing, on this particular job, we're not actually processing any in-guest application services, but I just wanted to show the possibilities that we have within that in-guest application aware processing, and just to walk you through a number of those features. And that should be with us in a couple of seconds. What we will be seeing in a second is the ability to control how we interact with perhaps Microsoft SQL and Exchange. So we will be able to here look at how we interact with the VSS process itself, how we interact with transaction logs. Here we have the ability to behave differently around SQL. We also potentially have the ability to gather those transaction logs on a more frequent basis. Same for Oracle. We have some file exclusions. And then let's move through to the schedule. Nothing too groundbreaking here, so I won't dwell on that. But once we've created a backup, we have the ability to browse and view those storage snapshots. So these storage snapshots that we see here, they are created on the Nimble device, but we can see them. We can actually understand that there are virtual machines on there. So all you would have to do to leverage that storage snapshot, I'm going to be able to right-click that particular virtual machine referenced within that snapshot. I could perform an instant VM recovery. But what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to perform a very simple file level recovery. So what this is actually going to do, I'm going to pick a point in time of the snapshots. You can see there that that was 8:45 this morning. Hit next. And hit next. Very simple. I can populate something in the log here, maybe a case ID, and hit finish. And what this is going to do, this is going to manipulate the snapshot, create a clone of the snapshot, mount that, and mount the virtual machine, but without the operator understanding or needing to know anything about how that's actually happening. So what this is going to then deliver to me is an Explorer view into the disks of that virtual machine. So being able to very easily, from that restore operator point of view, perform granular recovery from that storage snapshot. And that will take a number of seconds to get that available for me, but it reports to you as it's performing it. But it truly does bring together that great functionality of leveraging both backup and storage snapshots. Not so far away now. Whilst that's pausing, I'll check if there are any questions whilst that's happening. I seem to see we have a couple of questions.
Yeah, I think one of the questions was to do with can you circulate the content? And I think we absolutely will circulate the content and the recording after this session, so that will be sent out.
Sure, yes, excellent. Thank you for that, Nick.
And there's another question which I think might be for you, Kev, which is regarding backup verification, comparing Sure Backup to the new storage level corruption guard feature.
Okay, well, it's a slightly different take on verification. It's really around, because it goes beyond just is the same data or is the beyond corrupted data. So for instance, if a particular virtual machine was patched perhaps and not rebooted for 2 months, if you were running through Sure Backup, that would be able to identify that machine, if for whatever reason that patch failed and that was going to blue screen when you eventually rebooted it, Sure Backup would also be able to capture that failure. So it's because of the different angle, really. It's proving the application is in fact functional, as opposed to avoiding corruption. So slightly different angles. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Okay, so we have the Explorer in front of us here. So this is the ability to browse through the virtual disks on that particular virtual machine, and I can look through. I could go find my particular file that I wish to recover very easily. Again, this is from a snapshot, but the operator doesn't need to know how that's actually happened. And I could restore in place, and page file's an unusual one, but it's one that's of decent enough size to show. And I would be able to recover to one of my nested folders that you see that I use a lot, and just show you that recovery of that particular file coming from a storage snapshot. But the restore operator is, other than the buttons that were selected within the UI, is unaware of how that's actually happened. So it just makes the use of that technology very, very straightforward.
Okay. So just then, what's happened in that process is you've gone to the Veeam, the Veeam GUI, you've selected the virtual machine you want with the time frame you want from the snapshot. Veeam's then augmented Nimble. It's gone to a Nimble snapshot on the Nimble array. It's cloned it out as a new data set. It's presented it back up to the Veeam proxy. It's re-signatured the data store. And then it's showing you native in the Explorer the things that you can restore back native from the Nimble snapshot.
Exactly, yes. So powerful. Great sort of use of the technology and bringing that all together. And you can see there, I'm not going to actually use any of the other Explorers because I can see we're sort of coming to the end of the hour. But just as easily, I could be performing an Active Directory object recovery, an Exchange mailbox item recovery, SharePoint, a SQL. Again, I sometimes maybe get too excited about this. It's such a great way and such an easy way of performing recovery. It turns every type of recovery, every source of recovery, into something a restore operator can use. So just as we have 4 minutes left, what I'd like to do at this stage is actually just hand back to Nick just for a couple of slides, and then we'll try and cover any questions before the top of the hour.
Absolutely. So we thought we would put in one of our customer examples. So a very, very well-known DR as a service company called Island, who are a global company, use Nimble Storage and Veeam extensively within their managed platform, and they found huge amounts of benefits to both themselves but also their customers, where they can deliver, as you can see from the comment from the CTO Justin, high levels of availability and huge performance boosts in the hosted services, but they also get the better recovery objectives. You get a better customer satisfaction and better economic value for the customers. They've been an early adopter of this joint technology. I believe they were even a beta customer of this. And they are now the leader in disaster recovery as a service for both enterprise and mid-market customers. And don't stop there. I think both myself and Kev were going to cover this, but don't stop here. We've got a huge amount of more content that you guys can read about our joint solutions together. We have joint solution briefs. We have joint webinars together. This one being one of a series. But more importantly, you can download this and try this today. If you're a Nimble customer, you can get some trial licenses and try this out functionality-wise from Veeam. If you're a Veeam customer and you're looking at new primary storage or backup storage, we'd be happy to discuss with you, or even maybe provide you proof of concepts to be able to see how this stuff would work actually in your production environment. Kev, do you have anything to add there?
But just to add on, yes, all the Veeam products are available at full functionality for a 30-day trial. So, and even if you're a customer of an edition that maybe doesn't include the features you're wanting to look at, very easy to apply for and receive the next edition trial license, and your estate will be then upgraded for those 30 days. And then, as long as you're mindful and pop your original license back in, you can have done this and tested some of the integrations as well. And yes, I would also like to echo, as Nick said there, proof of concepts with Veeam and Nimble are a very successful and very easy thing to perform. So I'd invite anybody to talk to their local SE, local sales representative from either HPE Nimble or from Veeam to ask for that level of interaction. So at that point, with almost just on the dot there, I would certainly, we will be sharing the deck. Please look out for the next in the series of HPE product portfolio focused sessions. I would like firstly to thank Nick Dyer for joining me on the session today, and also thank you all for joining, and perhaps invite Nick if he has any closing words.
No, I'd like to echo what Kev's mentioned. So thank you very much for your time today, guys. You can reach me on Twitter at Nick_Dyer_. Kev, you're on Twitter as well, I believe. What's your handle?
Yes, you can reach me at UK Penfold. Anything Brilliant. You want, reach out.
If there's anything that we can do to help, please let us know.
Again, thanks very much, and we will be distributing the media, and the session is recorded. Thanks again, guys, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.